Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of our podcast. Today it's me and AJ chatting about tips about buying and selling and breeding geckos. And so from start to whatever that looks like, we're going to talk about and just have a conversation about what that might look like. And so hopefully that's helpful for new breeders and um, just to get their bearings of how to go about doing everything. And so yeah, AJ, I think you and I, we've had interactions of me buying from you, you selling to me, and it was a good experience. And so just as we talk about this, like what starting from scratch, right? Starting up completely new. Um, what are some of your tips and um, yeah, just advice for new collectors, people possibly aspiring to be breeders? Like, how can they go about doing everything?
Yeah, so I think, Harry, how I'd break it down would be to kind of break it down into in-person and online buying because it's a little bit
Yeah,
different. So we'll just kind of start talking about online, which is probably going to be your most common scenario depending on where you live. Um, but I would say first off, establishing your goals of what you want to produce and finding what's out there that's similar to maybe what you want to produce. So that's where I would start, is just looking for animals you like that draw your eye,
yeah,
and then learning a little bit more about kind of the background of that animal. So seeing, okay, who produced this animal that I really like? Oh, is this person? What pair did it come from? Oh, is that pair? Who
yeah,
produced that pair? And kind of getting an idea of where it kind of that rabbit trail ends, and then kind of figuring out the best point to buy along that trail, if that makes sense. Kind of
yeah,
where that trait really is at its strongest that you're kind of going after.
right.
And then I would reach out to the breeder that has those animals and describe briefly what your goal is, as far as the animal you want to produce or the animals that you'd like to buy, and asking them if they have those available or when that would maybe be something that they would have available. So that's
Yeah,
where
yeah,
I'd kind of
yeah.
start first.
So like like when I started chatting with you, like I really had no idea what was what in terms of the morphs and whatnot, and
Yeah.
so I wasn't sure what I liked. And so I think that was a little bit just this takes time to figure out. And so what you
Hmm.
say is like to figure out, just go through pictures and figure out the different morphs and kind of see what
Yeah.
catches your eye, and then finding breeders with that type particular morph that specializes in that.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. I would say that's a good place to start. And then also start with what catches your eye, and then maybe talk to breeders about that thing. Because if what caught your eye was something that is maybe not super marketable or desirable, and you
Yeah,
asked me my opinion of it, I'd be like, oh yeah, they're beautiful, but I might not have a house full of those. From a
yeah,
business
yeah.
standpoint, it might not be the best decision, but
Got it. Yeah, yeah,
most credible breeders would probably tell you um,
yeah.
what is maybe a good idea and what's not.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So for me, like I try to figure out again, not just to jump on like trends and whatnot, but to see
yeah,
the more I kind of like dove into looking at the different morphs and just scrolling through Instagram, like hours and hours of it, and just and seeing what's cool and what's not, then I begin to get a sense of like, oh, this looks really nice, or this and that, and then just going from there, right? And so varying away
yeah.
from like these weird looking geckos.
Yeah, and then another thing that I would say is, like, early on in the conversations that you have with these breeders, I would make sure that you have a ballpark of what those animals cost, so
Mm,
that
mm,
you're not getting your hopes up and getting the breeders' hopes up of, oh, on the breeder side, oh, this person's going to buy some animals, this is cool,
yeah,
and then you tell them their X amount, and the expectations on both sides don't match.
right.
So I would say, from a buyer's perspective, early on, be like, hey, could you give me an idea of kind of the range that these are priced in? Is it
Mm,
X to X, or, Y to Y, just so that I know what to expect when
yeah,
you do have one available, or if you do have some available now, just so that both parties feel, um, I guess, understood with expectations, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's a good thing to do. So you're not wasting each other's time as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, for you, since you have like a pretty large stock of animals from different qualities, I guess, or in terms of how you price things. So you have the gamut, right? You have like $100 geckos to all the way up to like thousands, right? Is that kind of
yes?
Where
yep.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody comes to me and they say, I always ask, it depends. It depends on the feeling I get from the conversation. But if somebody says to me, hey, I want this, do you have it? I'd be like, yes, I have it. Just, from a purely, just so that we're both on the same page. What's your budget for the animal you're looking to buy?
Yeah.
And if they say, I want an adult female, crazy high wide animal and my budget's $100, it'd be like, well, the conversation kind of ends here on that.
Yeah.
But just having those realistic expectations. So I think that's good from both sides, both from a selling perspective and a buying perspective. There's a sensitive way to have that conversation, though.
Yeah.
It's not be blunt and be like insensitive, but
do a lot of people message you with those messages, like asking like, oh, I want this.
Yeah.
And then you have a long conversation and then you're like, actually, I only have $500. So
that's why I make sure on those conversations that I feel like might go that way, I just try to set realistic expectations kind of from the beginning. So if somebody says, hey, I'm looking for, I always joke, people send you emails like, any females, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, there's females, but what's your price range? And if they say $100, I'm like, I can't help you. So
maybe on
it
the
really
auction.
Just kind of depends on, maybe on the auction.
Which are good animals, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But just setting realistic expectations either way. So from a buying or a selling perspective, and I do that personally. Like if I reach out to somebody and I'm like, hey, I like this pair, I like these animals, I don't see any available on your site. Could you give me an idea ballpark price wise so that when they do pop up, I know what to expect. So I have it ready to buy that animal when it's available. I personally do that. So I think that's just courtesy, at least from a buying perspective, just so that you are. And this kind of leads into what I'd like to say next is if you set those expectations for yourself of what something should cost, when something pops up, you can pull the trigger without hesitation because you've already thought to yourself in your mind, I expect to spend X amount of money to buy this animal. One came up, it's in that price range. Yes, I'll take it. And you can snap it up, no hesitation. You've decided this animal fits what you want from a lineage perspective, from a phenotype, how it looks perspective, from a price point of view. All of those things have lined up so that when that animal's offered to you, you don't have to go, let me think about it. You've already thought it through. So that is just, in my opinion, the best buying practices is to check all those boxes. And then when that animal's offered to you, it's the easiest decision in the world.
Yeah.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
that's
totally.
kind of that's my kind of rationale when it comes to, I love buyers that are like that. And I love selling, or I loved buying animals like that. And I love selling animals to people that approach me like that.
Yeah. Basically they're ready to go. Like, there's not this like extremely long conversation back and forth and they end up saying, no, thanks. Right.
I mean, I don't mind having a conversation to get them to the point where they kind of understand what they are looking for. But there's different ways those conversations can go. And I think one that's real window shoppy is not helpful to either. And one that's intentional where maybe you've done a little bit of research and you've looked at maybe the feed on the Instagram of somebody that you're interested in buying geckos from, and you see, oh, I like that one. That one's from this pair. Oh, I like that one. That one's from the same pair. All of those things. Then you're like, well, maybe I should buy one from that pair, kind of a thing. That's a good way to go about it.
Yeah. And then like buying like multiple animals
Yeah,
it's
that's huge.
also helpful too, right? In terms of like, oh, I'm gonna grab a couple from you, and then so you just
Yeah,
continue that conversation.
that's something that Gabby from Morph Menagerie talks a lot about, and that was a big
Mm-hmm.
way that they kind of built their collection. Was they did that where they figured out a pair, for example, they
Yeah.
were really into, and they're like, okay, when availability comes up, we're gonna buy 2 of this pair, 2 of that pair, 2. They would buy like 2 of everything,
Yeah.
so that they would, if they needed a male or they needed a female, they had a pretty good odd of getting one of what they needed.
Mm.
And then they could either move along that second animal to another home and recoup some cost, or they could keep them both if they're both killer, So that's a really good way to go about it. And you save on shipping, and the breeder will probably give you a nice discount if you're buying 4, 5, 6 animals.
I mean, so buying in that way is basically buying younger animals, buying like babies, and okay.
I would say the sweet spot for buying animals is in the like 4 to 10 gram range.
Okay.
It's like the sweet spot.
Got it.
Where you get like your most bang for your buck. They're not super developed, but they're developed enough where if you have a good eye, you can get good deals on them. And then you're not paying like the premium of an animal that's already colored up a lot.
Yeah.
Because that animal at 15 grams is probably twice the cost, 3 times the cost.
I see. I mean, like, just from your perspective, how long do you hold back your animals? Like, at what grams do you know
before I let them go?
Yeah.
Um,
or more so about like, you want to hold back your best stuff, right?
Yeah.
How do you know when to let it go or not?
Yeah. I would say most animals, if I've like slotted it as a holdback, I'll keep it to 15 to 20 grams.
Okay.
And then at that point, if I'm not loving it, I'll move it along.
Okay. So around 15
or
grams.
If it doesn't fit a slot that I need at the house.
Got it. So that's when you kind of know, as a seller or just as a breeder, around 15 grams, it's kind of like, which way it's going to go a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, and certain things are like, there's lots of animals that I sell that are killer that I sell small.
Yeah.
But it's just because I don't necessarily need anything from that pair.
Got it.
At that time. Like, I already have a holdback female and a holdback male from that pair. So it's like, all right, unless I have one that magically comes out that blows one of the holdbacks I have out of the water, like, I'm gonna sell every baby out of that pair.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, that's more of a thing where I would say you get more holdbacks from new pairs. New pairs where it's like, I don't know what these are going to turn out like. I have an idea. But pairs that maybe you've bred for 3, 4, 5 seasons, you have a pretty good idea because you've seen 50 babies come out of that one pair.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, I know what that one's going to look like. Because I've hatched 10 others that look similar and I've raised them out, or I've seen progress photos of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that there's a lot of value in raising animals from new pairs out a little bigger, just to evaluate them. Okay. But pairs that you really understand, you can sell them smaller.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
So
yeah.
And then, just speaking about buying still, I would say another tip that I would have is just buying the nicest animals that you can afford.
Yeah.
Afford reasonably, I'll say.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to put themselves into massive debt buying geckos by any means.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, have an idea of what your budget is for a project, for a single animal. And yeah, I would spend as much as you can on the nicest animals you can.
Do you feel like there's
within reason?
Right. Do you feel like there's like a general budget to where it's not like crazy, like I'm not going to spend like $50,000 right away, but like, is there like a general like budget you feel like would help spike a collection that allows for a cycle of breeding in a decent manner of time, right? Because if you're saying like if you're going to spend like $2,000 on a few 2 or 3 animals, it's going to take you quite a while to kind of build that collection.
Yeah, it all depends. You know, it's one of these things where there's a balance of speed to marketability, speed to like building a business, but speed costs money, and then time or patience saves you money. So there's a balance of those two things, right? So I don't know if there's an actual number because it depends on what project you have. You know, you could build a 10 animal project around, you know, red phantom pinstripes for $3,000. But if you want to do, you know, phantom lily white Axanthics, you're looking at $50K to build a 10 animal project, you know, so, or more. So it all depends on what you're doing. That's kind of it's kind of a cop out answer.
No, that's fine. I think
it depends on what your project is.
Yeah. You know, you're talking to some other breeders, you know, I realized there's a lot of people that actually have like a really good collection. And we talked about this before, a really good collection, but it's smaller and more focused. And they produce a lot of good stuff. Right. And so,
they produce a lot of good stuff and they get like premium dollar for their stuff. And maybe they didn't spend premium dollar on that stuff. They were just really good shoppers.
Yeah.
You know, they went to a lot of shows and they like really knew, oh, this person's got sleeper animals that are affordable. I'm going to go first thing, I'm going to go to their table. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to buy some. And so there really is ways to do it affordably.
Yeah. Do you feel like,
I think you have to spend that time to do research to find those deals.
For sure. Do you feel like you know, as a new breeder, from what you've seen, AJ, like, is there this initial collection where people are collecting like as good of a stock as they can, and then is it like 2 years or 3 years where they're beginning to produce a lot of their own animals, you know, because they're all growing up now?
Yeah, right? Normally it's interesting. Being around for a long time, I remember when I first started selling animals back in like the mid 2000s. I would sell, you know, every show I'd sell 2, 3, 4, 5 geckos to all these different people, you know, 5, 6, 7 more people would buy multiple animals. And then like 2 years later, I didn't see him anymore. And I'm like, where the heck did that guy go? And then I go to use the bathroom and he's vending
he's next to you
a table like 5 tables over, and I didn't see him, and he's selling his own animals now. So that's the natural cycle. I mean, when people first start, they have to build that stock. And then after that, as a breeder, me too, you get much more selective about what you're going to buy. Like if I'm going to buy something now, you better know that I've got a real purpose for it. So and the stuff that you buy, the longer you're in, is more and more expensive, but you buy less and less.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm excited for your.
If I'm buying animals now, they're very expensive, but they're very few and far, you know, between purchases.
Yeah, I'm excited for your Axanthic purchase and collection.
That'll be cool, man.
That's
I'm gonna do that. I am planning on doing Sable.
Wow.
I will do cappuccino at some point. The prices are kind of tumbling right now, pretty hard. No, they're dropping pretty. They're dropping pretty aggressively.
We got to do a podcast on all these different morphs because I'm like, what, you know, what's the hype between this one, you know, and so that'll be good to talk about.
Yeah, right now as of like a couple days ago, you could buy one in Korea for $6,000 to $7,000, or you could buy one in the US from the people who made them for $3,000. So,
wow.
It's about to be a little rocky out there as far as price.
I got it. Is it like a lily white where the prices shot up and then it's like dropping back down?
Well, the prices of, you're gonna think this is horrible, but the prices of lily whites when they started were super low.
Oh, okay.
Like way too cheap.
Yeah, like $500.
The first, like
like $500 for a lily white.
My first male from Lily Exotics, which I bought the year the second release that they released females. Yeah. And then they released males, and I bought then, and they were $700.
Oh my goodness.
And this was when they first released them. And when I bought it, I was like, these should have been like $5,000.
Yeah.
For what? No, he would only sell you like one or two.
Okay.
And but now people, since I think I've learned from Lily Exotics, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it was the first true crested gecko genetic morph that was developed and sold. So
yeah.
But now people have learned, like, in order to maintain that market over a few year, 3 to 5 year period, you kind of have to start higher. You know, it's not like ball pythons where a new gene is like 100K.
Yeah.
But you need to kind of start higher so that there's some room to be able to, you know, work with it over time, and
got it,
for people to make their investment back and stuff.
Do you have any cappuccinos?
Not currently.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I've been a little bit hesitant because I felt like it's a little bit different scenario than lily whites, because lily whites came out of one person, and if you didn't buy them from Lily from Lily Exotics in the first year, like, there was no chance you're getting one.
Yeah.
But cappuccinos came out of one of the largest wholesalers in the world. And so these things have been shipped all over the place for 5 years and no one knew.
Wow.
So that's the difference, is like Lily Exotics had 100 of these things to sell, and cappuccinos, there's probably 10,000 of them out there.
Yeah.
And so that's what's made me a little hesitant.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Now
whether they're proven or not, you know, there's a lot of unproven caps out there.
Yeah.
But they're also
maybe this is a chat for a different time, but just quickly, like,
identifying.
Yeah. How do you know what's what when it comes to cappuccino?
Well, I'm by far not an expert. Obviously, I don't have them personally. I don't have personal experience with them. You know, I've read all the guides on identifying them. But I also see animals that are posted by like Reptile City Korea and others that break those molds of what they say are characteristics. It's like, oh, they have a brighter white, you know, base of the tail. Well, this one's got a yellow base of the tail. They've got, you know, the V at the base. This one doesn't have a V. They've got, you know, these certain kind of undertones. That doesn't have that. You know, they have half their tail is, you know, bright white, half of it's gray. Well, this one's got a full gray tail. You know, it's like there's ones that they claim that are cappuccinos, which I believe them, but I don't think it's as black and white as this is the set, you know, set of characteristics that defines it. It seems a little bit more nuanced. And I'm not an expert.
So right now it's just a little bit more arbitrary in terms of figuring out what are the exact traits of this thing.
Yeah, and I think that it's probably easier to identify them per the collection that it's coming out of. So like Reptile City Korea understands their own animals. But there's people producing cappuccinos like Omni Geckos, or some of these other folks are producing caps from animals that they bought stateside from, you know, shows or whatever, found one on a table. It looks cool. They bought it. They proved it out. But maybe theirs don't have the, you know, the half or the bright white tail.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the V at the tail base. You know, it's like, it's kind of all over the place right now. So I think you can probably define the ones that come from one person pretty easily. Got it. But if it's, you can't blanket that across the morph in general.
Got it.
It doesn't.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll chat more about that sometime. But going back to buying, do you feel like it's worth, I just kind of depends on budget, but is it worth jumping into such a huge project like that? Like, oh, your first animal's a Axanthic or a cappuccino, or should it?
I think Axanthic is much safer.
Okay. Yeah. Because
Axanthic being a gene that carries as a het a recessive trait makes it's got some insulation to it, because you have to have het animals or two visual animals to create visual Axanthics. So it's got more insulation than, oh, I just buy one and I breed it to 20 females and I make 1 million of them.
Got it.
Like people are going to do with cappuccinos, like people did with lily whites back in the day. And then lily whites flooded for a while. a lot of kind of poor examples
Hmm.
were produced, and that brought down the market on the lowest end. But as you still see, the highest end lily whites
They still go.
are still demanding very good prices.
Yeah, there's some really nice lily whites out there that look super clean.
Oh my gosh. I mean, man, it is like, I know I've said this, I don't know to you before, but lily white is like the cheat code.
Yeah.
It really is. It creates like people's dream animals with this gene. It's such an amazing gene that it takes the animal you breed it to, and it just makes this crazy added white version of it. It's incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah, and now people are trying to chase the high white of a non-lily, and that seems a lot more elusive in trying to create that more.
I think that will always gain, in my personal opinion, and what I respect is, I will always respect people that work on animals that are not just, oh, it's a visual Axanthic. That's cool. I really like, there's something to be said about like the beauty of it and the challenge of it, but the process of creating these animals that are void of any of those external genes, and are just being produced by selective breeding that is a true challenge, and that I think can give longevity to a collection and a business.
So there's no cheat code. You're basically trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's hard work, right?
Selectively, choosing rather than just throwing a lily in there. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
No, that's good, man.
Both are valuable.
Yeah, that's good. So buying the nicest animal you can afford reasonably. I just got to figure out what that is,
and then
and what you can pick up.
Let's talk a little bit about shows, buying from shows, right? We talked about buying online. There'll be some crossover here, but I'll ask you first this. So you've been to a couple shows recently, right?
The Anaheim, and then some local shows up here in the Bay Area.
Talk about your process of when you walked in the building, kind of what you did, maybe things you learned from that about walking in a show, walking it, looking at tables, talking to breeders. I'd love to hear your point of view from being kind of new into the hobby.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I try to get there as right when it opens. I'm not sure if there's like some secret that the vendors, the breeders do. Like, do you guys put out all your nicest stuff? But I assume that the nicest stuff is going to be the first day, right when you guys open. And so I'll go in as early as I can and just walk through. I do my walk around, and then it gives me a good base of like, okay, for now I'm going to avoid hair, and hair. For me, I'm looking at cresteds, right? And at Anaheim, there weren't a ton of cresteds. There's like a lot of other reptiles, right? And so I just try to focus on looking at some of the crested geckos, and then just spending my time at those tables and looking at what they have, and kind of comparing what I've seen online. And so maybe that's kind of how I approach it. And I realize that a lot of the nicest stuff is online. And so the shows are good for me just to get a feel of what's what, who's who, like who are the breeders, and trying to get a lay of the land in terms of what does the gecko community look like. And then when it comes to buying, though, I'm a little bit more hesitant to purchase at a show because it doesn't allow me enough time to think through stuff. Whereas where I'm online, I'll just chat with you, I'll chat with other breeders, I'll look at pictures, and I'll compare, right? But at a show, I feel a lot more pressure of like, am I just going to impulse buy this, or and so I'm not always 100% sure. But that's kind of what I do. I just go and kind of walk around real quickly, and then try to figure out what's what. And so I don't know. Do you feel like that's a good way to approach it?
Yeah, I would say like if I walk into a show, like I went to Anaheim last year, right? So the first thing I did was I want to see every booth. Yeah. And if there's something that is just like screams out to me and I have to buy it, then I'll buy it before I make a full lap. But yeah, I want to get eyes on everything. So normally when I'm doing my first lap, I'm moving pretty fast.
Yeah.
Like I'm,
Yeah.
you know, you're probably like trying to keep up with me. You'd probably be like, why is that guy running through the show? But I'm kind of getting a little bit of a just a peek at where things are at and where people
Do
are
you
at.
have something
So
specific in mind? As in, like, oh, I'm looking for this Dalmate Super Dal, and then you just look
yeah,
at
I might have some targets in my
Okay,
mind of
okay.
like, you know, oh, I'm looking for, you know, I'm looking for a super Dal male. I'm just giving examples. I'm looking for like a couple lychee males that are, you know, a little bit bigger. I'm looking for, you know, a female Iridactylode agricola. I'm looking for, you know, I might have these things in my mind that I'm like, all right, I'm looking for these things. And so I'll kind of scope the show first, and then I'll go back and whatever was kind of like the number one thing that was interesting to me or I thought was promising as far as a booth that might have something that I want.
Yeah.
Then that's the first place I'm going back to after I make my quick lap. My first initial quick lap probably takes me 15, 20 minutes. And then I'm like right back to where I think is the best spot.
Even at Tinley, where it's huge?
There. I haven't walked at full Tinley in like 10 years.
Okay, I got you.
Because I'm stuck behind my table.
Oh, that's right. You're vending.
Yeah.
I mean, for you, I mean, I assume that you buy most of the stuff offline. But what is, I mean, for you?
Yeah, I mean, I buy a good amount of stuff. I buy a good amount of stuff in person because often the stuff that I'm buying from friends.
I see.
I would say the majority of the stuff I buy is in person.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it might be in person at a big show like that, or it might be like I'm buying it online via like DMs, and then I'm picking it up at a show.
Okay.
I don't get a ton of animals shipped to me.
Okay.
As crazy as that might seem.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way it goes. But yeah, so I'll do that. I'll do that kind of blaze through the show, come back, go to a table that I'm really interested in. And then at that point, I'm having a conversation with the breeder, right? So, I'm interested in this animal. Could you tell me a little bit more about it? I just want to kind of understand
parents and
what produced it, you know, because if they pull up parent pictures and they're just horrible, I'm gonna be like, oh, this thing's like a freak of nature. I don't really want to buy this animal because it's like a 1 in a million. I'm not looking to play the lottery with its offspring, you know. So I'm looking for consistency too. Like, oh, they've got really nice adult animals. They produced a really consistently nice offspring.
So also asking for sibling pictures, maybe.
Maybe not siblings, but at least parents.
Okay.
Siblings is hard because that would mean that they would have had to have a holdback, or they would have had to have an animal, a picture of a sibling sent back to them, and they have to have that like in a folder.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
You know, I'll just ask them like, what do the siblings verbally, what do they turn out like? What do these things kind of turn into?
Okay. Are there shows?
And then,
oh no, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Oh, and I was just gonna say, and then at that point, if there's multiple, if I need a certain sex animal to breed into a project, I'm gonna pull. I always have a loop in my pocket, a jeweler's loop. I see. So I'm gonna pull a loop out, and I'm gonna look at the animal. I'm gonna ask the permission of the breeder. Obviously, if I can take the animal out of the cup and loop it, and I've never had anyone tell me no. So take the animal out, loop it, and see if there's any indicators one way or another. And if I need a female or if I need a male, that kind of helps inform my decision on what animal I'm going to buy.
Got it. Yeah. Are there like specific shows? I mean, does it matter what show you go to, as in terms of the quality of animals?
There's certainly shows that are better, but there's also some like random shows that you can have like a random show where you score some crazy animal, right?
Yeah.
Normally it's not like you're going to go to local show with 40 vendors and you're going to come out with like all this awesome stuff, but you might come out with like one really cool thing. that's kind of a one-off score. But I would say the NARBC shows, Tinley. I haven't been to the St. Louis one. I'd imagine it's okay. I haven't been to the Arlington, Texas one. I'm sure that one's good. I would say the Daytona show in Florida is a good one.
So the Schaumburg one?
Schaumburg. That's another NARBC show. There's also obviously super shows out in California. There's the super show in Las Vegas. The Reptilian Nation shows have been good. So there's a lot of different spots that you could go. I would just ask people around your area, maybe people that you've met through the hobby or online that are in your area. Hey, what are the good shows?
Yeah.
You know, and maybe you might have to, you know, make a drive for a little while. But you'll find out where those sweet spots are.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and maybe that means you're going to go to no local shows a year, and you're going to fly to Chicago once a year in October and go to Tinley.
Or the Flora Fauna.
Or the Flora Fauna. Honestly, thanks for reminding me. Gabby's going to kill me for not plugging the show.
Flora Fauna.
But I will say, and this is like, obviously I'm biased because I'm involved with the show. But like, take that away. It was the most incredible offering of like high-end geckos I've seen. It is by far, I have no hesitation in saying, for the size of the show, the number of high-end geckos was ridiculous. It was the best small show. It was like, it had as good of geckos as your average Tinley in a room that was like 1/50th of the size.
That's crazy. I mean, after going to like a few local shows and even going to Anaheim, this was my first Anaheim show that I just went to, and I was, not to knock on them, but I was a little bit under, I was like, oh, this is okay. And so it makes
you wouldn't have walked out of Flora Fauna without 10 animals.
Dude,
I almost guarantee.
Yeah, so I mean, just seeing who the vendors were and the breeder, I was like, oh, this show is like probably really ridiculous. And so I got to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, with like Allie and Brett and Gabby and Pangea and Cryptiles and Keith and Laura at Generations and Emily Burke and Christy and all those different people, Kevin at Fireside. I mean, it was just like, man, it was just
amazing.
Stacked.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was awesome.
You guys need a West Coast one out here so it's easier for me to.
Yeah, we'll work on it.
I was like, if I fly out there, I think the price of tickets and staying is, I could probably buy a high end. Maybe just buy a high end and then have it shipped over. But
maybe we'll. I got to find a campground out there. That's where I want to stay. I got to get the tent.
Because you guys said it was in the cuts, right? It's like some random.
Yeah, it's in the mountains. It's like up in the mountains, which is awesome. It's like, it's legit in like a really beautiful spot, waterfalls and nature surrounding you.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. So
that's cool. Yeah.
So back to buying animals. Last thing, which is a reiteration, is buying groups of animals from people that you connect with and you believe in kind of what they're doing and the animals they have. Buying groups of animals, one, to get a good deal, to support the breeder, and it ups your odds of getting exactly what you need. And you can always just sell the animals that don't work out perfectly. So I always encourage people, if there's a pair that's really nice, you should buy 2 or 3. Because there's only going to be 10, 12 babies of that pair for the entire year, spread across everybody that might want them. So if you can buy 2 and you really like that pair, do it.
From a buyer's perspective, which was me this year, right? And I think it, like reaching out to a lot of breeders, and some people like are more chill about helping out and chatting, and others that are just more just more like busy. Even though I'm ready, I'm ready to like purchase. If they give me more of their time, then I'll just move on. And so, but I get it. Like I think.
Yeah, well, that's a good lesson for a lot of people out there, because I think even me myself, but I never got got a feeling from talking to you that you were
Is window shopping.
window
Kicking
shopping.
the tires.
You know, so you seemed serious on what you were
Yeah,
trying to do. But also, you gotta give people the chance, because I will say I've had a couple people where I'm like, there's no way this person's gonna buy this animal, because maybe I kind of prejudge the way they've talked to me or the way they approached the conversation. And I just kind of, in my head, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll send you parent pics, whatever. Maybe I send it to them a little later than I would send to somebody
that was
I
more serious.
know. And then they buy the animal, and I'm like, oh, I totally misjudged you. And so I've been trying to be better about like treating everyone with the exact same level of like respect and responsiveness.
That's tough.
And that's been something that I've not been perfect on in the past.
I mean, that for sure, that's tough, because I'm sure you got a lot of, just window shoppers and people just trying to like ask a lot of questions, which isn't bad, but it just takes a lot of time, right? And so I get it. Sellers need to be a little bit more discerning with their time. But yeah, I think a lot of breeders I passed up on because of just their approach to the conversation. I was like, all right, you got nice animals, but I'm just gonna move over, right? And so, I was ready.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, nice animals.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was ready to throw down, and but yeah. So,
all right, send me a text when you're ready to buy more
after this. Any ready to breed females?
Any RGB girls?
That's hilarious, man. Waiting for those shirts.
We need those shirts. Yeah, they're coming. They're coming. Get ready.
Cool. Switching over to sellers from the seller perspective. So I've, you just asked me this before we started recording, but I've never sold any geckos yet, or reptiles, because I'm just in purchasing and hoarding mode right now.
Well, I'm still in that mode too.
Yeah, you're always hoarding animals.
I'm always hoarding.
Yeah, trying to build the nicest stuff. But what are some of your advice and tips for people who are beginning to sell, or even people who are already selling? How can you guys do it better, and what would be more helpful?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of break it into the same thing of online versus shows. And I'll start with online again, because that's where we started with buying. First things first, have a good, tight terms of service.
What do you mean?
That's huge. So having your terms of service for what your buyer is going to be seeing and agreeing to when you're selling them an animal. So whether that's shipping terms. So say I ship an animal to you, and if I don't have any terms and that animal dies 3 weeks later, and they send me a message and like, hey, this animal died 3 weeks later. Well, I have no idea what you did to it the last 3 weeks. Yeah. Did you feed it? Did you spray it? Did you put it in your attic where it's 100 degrees? I have no idea. So if you don't have that in writing, you're just opening yourself up to issues, right? So having terms also with like payment plans. If somebody if you have a payment plan option where somebody wants to buy a very expensive animal, they put a chunk of money down, they don't talk to you for a year, and then they come back and they're like, hey, can I have my money back? If you don't have any terms, you don't really have a leg to stand on to tell them no. So
gotcha.
If they abandon a sale, or if you ship them an animal, they never pick it up from FedEx and the thing dies at FedEx, which has never happened, but it's a scenario that could. And then they try to charge back on your PayPal or whatever. If you don't have any legal terms of services that people agree to by purchasing or by signing, like e-signing before they purchase an animal, then you're just kind of asking for issues. So number one, have good terms of service. And that can be that's a wide list of things that can be included under that, as far as just really having something to kind of protect you from a seller's perspective.
Got it. So you have
to protect the buyer too. Yeah, on the website. And then also whenever I sell to international customers, I make sure that I send it to them via email or via chat and just saying, do you consent to this? please sign your name? Yes. Okay.
Got it.
Moving on. So another thing is, speaking about websites, is having a good website. A website that works well, professional, clean, is easy to utilize, is very important. Good images, that's another thing. So having good photography and professional images is huge. And one thing I'll say that I've seen a lot of recently is images that are not, images and video specifically, that are not accurate to the looks of animals.
Like bad lighting.
So maybe selectively bad lighting. So it's like, oh, I'm shooting a picture of a dark animal or a charcoal, and then I shoot them in like low light scenario. It's like, oh, check that thing out, it's black, but you know, you're shooting it like 30% underexposed, you know. And it's like, all right, well, if you actually shot this in proper lighting, it would look dark brown, you know, not black. So having proper lighting and photography that represents the animal well is very important. Not using filters on your images, not using huge contrast bumps, huge, you know, black. A lot of people do, like, they'll bump the blacks in their images to make the dark animals look darker. Yeah, it'll make like tricolors look like really dark, and it'll make their white look really white because the animal looks darker. And so just not doing those things, so that the worst thing you could have as a seller is that you sell an animal to someone and they get it and they're not happy with it because it doesn't look like the picture. And so I'm happy to say that I had that happen one time, which,
as a
the
seller?
image, the guys, this was like 5 years ago. The guy's like, yeah, it doesn't look like the picture. And I'm like, here's the label, ship it back today. He shipped it back, and somebody inquired on it like a week later, and they're like, hey, I want to buy this. And I sold it to them with the same image. They got it. They're like, wow, it's beautiful, way better than the picture. And I'm like, okay. Obviously that guy just, for whatever reason, had seller's remorse, and that's fine.
Got it.
But I try to pride myself on, if you get an animal from me, I want you to be happier with it than when you picked it out with the picture.
Do you feel like
I want you to get it and be like, this is amazing.
So you feel like cell phone pictures capture the actual...
It depends. I think that like some outdoor cell phone pictures are okay. But if you're running a business, most places in the world and in the country, cell phone pictures outdoors year round is not possible.
I see. The lighting.
Like where you live, it is, because you don't really get like a true winter or a true summer.
It's always moderate outside.
It's pretty moderate. 60, 70s, and here I would say it's moderate most of the year, but I get like a month or two a year of winter. And you can't go take a picture of your gecko when it's 30 degrees outside. So
you wouldn't recommend like a light
learning
box?
How to do
a light box?
I would recommend a light box, or I'd recommend flashes on soft boxes. Either one of those are good options to shoot photos indoors throughout the year. So I would encourage people to get a good DSLR camera, get a good lens, like a good macro lens, get a good light box or good soft boxes and flashes, and really learn how to use them.
It must drive you crazy.
That's huge.
Because you have like a ton of animals that you got to take pictures of. So people are always asking you for pictures, right? I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I took like photos of maybe 50 animals the other day, and I haven't edited any of it. I haven't done any. The only editing I'll really do on images nowadays is that I'll go in and like clone stamp out pieces of like dust and dirt and stuff.
Got it.
That, and sometimes you have to, especially if you're using flashes, you have to kind of restore what the flash washed out. So you do little micro adjustments, but
gotcha.
The goal is always get the animal to what it looks like.
Accurate.
with the naked eye
Mm.
or slightly worse, so that people
when they get
feel
it.
better about them when they get
Yeah.
them. So
No, that makes sense.
that's always my goal, is natural. I want it to look as natural as I can.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So photos, huge. Website, huge. Social media is huge.
Mm.
I suck at it, but
Yeah,
I'd recommend doing it.
Yeah.
That is something that would help my business a lot, is if I was better at social media.
Yeah.
Which you've seen. I mean, we talked to like Brian Hu.
Yeah,
He's killing it.
Yeah, Brian's
So
great at it. Yeah, we're a
yeah,
little bit
Brian's
slower
like
at it.
Brian's our guru, right? You know, we just send him a message like, Brian, help us.
Yeah, social media 101. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's huge, social media. And then something that I've really become passionate about ever since moving down to North Carolina and becoming better friends with Brett and Gabby from Morph Menagerie, and others, is collaboration with other breeders.
Yeah.
So from a selling standpoint, I mean, there's power in collaboration and in working together, right? So we're all, if you have this scarcity mindset of like, if I help you sell animals, then I can't sell my own animals. That's not a good mindset to have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there looking to buy geckos. The best thing you could do is help one another, right? So if somebody reaches out to me and is like, hey, I want like this animal and I don't have it, and I know a friend that does, I'll send them to them.
Yeah.
That's, or Gabby and I will do like live stream together and both sell animals side by side.
Yeah, that's
right?
awesome. Yeah.
Collaboration's huge. Doing collaboration shows, vending, like when you're small, vend shows with another breeder. Vend together. I did a show once where I vended with like 4 or 5 breeders as a mega booth together. And it was like all the branding and stuff was like combined. So we got like stickers that were like all of us together and all this different stuff. And doing that collaboration is just powerful.
Do you
right?
Do you guys just go in both as your own vending tables and you just are next to each other, or is it actually?
I mean, sometimes one person just buys them all and then you work together. But I don't know. Logistically, you can do it any way you want.
Okay, so there's no rule where you can't just bring in other vendors to vend at your table.
Not necessarily. I think that most of the shows only care about getting paid.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
If the show's getting the booth paid for, I don't know if they really care.
Got it. Cool. Yeah.
So, yeah. So collaboration is huge. And then from an online selling standpoint, I'll just end this with learning how to ship. Learning how to ship animals domestically and internationally safely is massive, because I think that's what holds a lot of local breeders back, is that people that do a lot of shows and maybe sell locally, they're like, I'm just not comfortable shipping. And that's cutting off 98% of the customers that you could have away from you because you have not learned that skill, right?
Yeah.
So I just encourage people, talk to people that are knowledgeable in it, learn how to do it, and do it.
Is it hard to ship internationally? Because you have to ship to somebody and then they have to ship. So it's like multiple. Is it like a multi-day process?
It's a multi-day process, but there's things you can do to prepare the animals for that process.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So that's something that you just talk to somebody that's knowledgeable about how to prepare those animals for that journey. Because if, say, you shipped them, you fed 2 days ago and you didn't feed them and you just threw them in a deli cup and you go to ship them to Korea, they probably won't make it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Like before I ship them, they're getting fed multiple times. They're getting hydrated extra amounts. They are hydrated and fat and happy before they go.
Gotcha.
And their deli cup has just the right amount of water for them to have on that trip. Not too much though, because too much water is bad.
Yeah.
And just there's a lot of.
Have you ever had any animals die on you on shipping it out?
I only had one die on me a few years ago, and it was my fault because I shipped 2 boxes the same day, and for whatever reason I had a brain fart and thought they were going to the same state.
Oh, okay.
And one was going up north and one was going to Texas.
Got it.
And I heat packed them both.
Oh no. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And so I shipped from Illinois when it was cold, and so I shipped a gecko to like Wisconsin, and I shipped a gecko to Texas, and it was like 90 degrees.
Oh no.
Texas. So I killed an animal that, and it was my fault, 100%.
But
and I've never done it since. It's one of those things where like you make a mistake once,
you learn.
And I had shipped geckos for like 10 plus years before that and not made that mistake. But it was like one of those days where who knows what kind of a day I had that day, and was I not thinking clearly or running too fast or whatever, and just made that mistake. But it was one of those things where, you know, the person reached out to me, hey, the animal's dead. Why is there a heat pack in the box? I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, I don't. So, and then you just instantly rectify it.
Yeah.
You know, hey, you know, they bought a $300 gecko. This is what I did. They bought a $300 gecko. Pick out anything on the website under $500 and I'll ship it to you tomorrow.
Got it. Yeah.
You know,
that's cool.
Oh yeah, I really like this one. It's from the same pair. It's a little nicer, whatever. Great. It's on your way. I ate the shipping. I shipped it to them.
Yeah.
Make the customer happy.
Yeah.
That's what matters. That's what matters at the end of the day.
That's pretty good. Just one out of so many years and thousands of geckos.
Multi-thousands.
Yeah. No, seriously. That's awesome.
Yeah. So learning how to do that is really important. And then from a show selling perspective, same kind of thing. Like a website, have a professional looking booth, have a clean booth, you know, don't have trash all over the place. That, you know, we struggle with that. When Brian and I and Gabby vend together, we're always like throwing goldfish crackers at each other and shooting each other with spray bottles and stuff. Yeah. Trying to keep stuff like look clean, look professional. Good lighting. Good lighting is like, that's your photography at a show, right? If your lighting sucks, then your animals look horrible. So having good lighting is crucial. And then having clean containers to view your animals in. Like, you don't want to use your crusty deli cups that, you know, 1,000 geckos have pooped in it and you kind of like half cleaned it before the show. So keeping like, and as animals defecate in the cups, you want to clean and you want to keep your cups clean. You want to make sure that you're presenting something that is professional, right? And then I always recommend people in this modern day and age, there's no reason why you can't take a credit card,
Apple Pay,
take PayPal, take Cash App, take Venmo, take any form of payment that you are willing to take. There's no reason why in this day and age you shouldn't be able to do it. So when people are like, oh yeah, I'm cash only, it's like, what are you living in, like 1982?
let me write you a check.
Yeah.
Oh man,
is this like a shady money laundering diner or something? So yeah, having a good way to take payment is very important. And then something that I really liked, I'll give a shout out to Kyle from Cryptiles. When he was at Florafauna, he had a really good idea of having, he had like the biggest iPad you could buy. I mean, the thing had to be like 16 inches. It was huge. I've never seen an iPad that big. And then he had it preloaded with both photos from his Instagram that he thought were good photos, and then breeder photos of his own breeders of the animals that are on the table. And it was just on it was on a slideshow.
That's really smart.
And so as you're kind of standing there, it's like, oh, wow, that one's crazy. Look at that one. Oh yeah. Well, you can say, here's the sibling to that. Here's the parents of that. And it's kind of a combination of conversation starter. And then it makes it really easy to show your customers things that they ask about. Because often people will be like, oh, do you have parent pictures for that? And then you pull your cell phone out.
Yeah, that's happened all the time at the show.
So I saw that from Kyle, and I'm like, man, that's a great idea. I had seen my friend Brian also do that with a laptop. I think you could do it with either. But I think that's a really good idea that I'm going to do for, kind of my bigger round of shows coming up is something that I'd like to do is have that just kind of available and running. And it's a nice conversation starter, and it allows you to showcase animals.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's something that is great, is being able to show those animals easily and quickly.
That's awesome. Cool, man. Yeah.
Do you feel like I ticked all the boxes of buying and selling?
I mean, eventually I'll get there one day. Even as we were at the shows and the kids were like, "Oh, I can't wait till we vend a show." I'm like, "Oh, well, we don't even have it. We're just getting eggs, right?" I'm like, "We don't really have much," but they like this aspect of just like this business aspect of being on the table and talking with people and talking about geckos and animals and so. Yeah, so I'll get there one day, and then that's when I'll come back to this episode, or or I'll hit you up. I'll give you a call.
I want to add one thing, Harry. So when we're talking about selling at shows, I think something that's very valuable is to have a range of pricing that does not shut out maybe newer people. So big breeders out there that want to produce only the hottest stuff. Maybe you have like 2 pairs that are lower end, that these are the animals that I sell as entry animals to people at shows. And the reason why you do that is everybody starts somewhere, right? You bought your first gecko from a pet store. I bought my first gecko from a pet store. Like back in the day, first one I ever bought from pet store, right? So it's really good to be able to have those entry level animals for people, for pets, or that just maybe they've never had a reptile at all. You think they're going to spend $3,000 and they've never owned a reptile before? They've got to, I wouldn't recommend that because I don't want them to kill it. I don't want something to happen, so I think having that kind of range of quality and range of pricing is very important when you're vending shows. If you want to be an all online guy and you only want to sell the top dollar animals and you never want to talk to a family with kids or with somebody that's new, go for it. But if you're going to do shows, that's part of the deal. So be prepared for that too. Like have even maybe under the table, have little $20 kits you make up that you just sell for cost, so that the person has an effective cage to take the animal home with and take care of it well. So that's something that Gabby and Brett do really well, and I've kind of stolen from them, is just have a box that's got a vent cut in it already, like a vent they can spray through. It's got paper towel, a piece of cork, a Pangea plant or a plastic plant, a bag of food, and 2 food dishes. And it's like, all right, in cost, this thing cost me $20. I'm going to hand it off to anybody that buys like their first time gecko. I'm just going to sell it to them for $20.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I always make sure that I have 3 or 4 or 5 of those with me, because it always kind of happens. Somebody buys a gecko and then you're like, oh yeah, there's a guy over there that I think has some stuff, and then they're like confused, and it just doesn't make for a great experience for the customer. So the more pain you can take off their shoulder within reason, do it.
And just a question as you were trying, when you have like a ton of geckos, like how do you, I'm sure you can't sell every single one. Like how do you wholesale it, and where does, do you have like a,
at the end of the show,
not at the show,
or
just in general as a seller?
I haven't wholesaled a gecko in a long time.
I gotcha.
So yeah, it shows it's before I would sell some of my low end stuff to my local pet store.
Got it.
So that was kind of my outlet for affordable stuff, was my local pet shop. It was like every 3-4 months they'd be like, hey, can we get like 10 more? I'm like, yeah,
Right.
sure. But you'll notice the longer you breed, the less and less cheap animals you
I see.
produce.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because you're selectively breeding nicer and nicer and nicer animals.
Got it.
The odds of wholesale animals popping out keep going down.
Cool.
So
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also, I mean, if you wanted to wholesale stuff, there's always demand for that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to get rid of 1,000 geckos tomorrow wholesale, somebody pay you tomorrow for them.
Gotcha.
It's the way it's been for a long time. Other than in like 2008 when we were in like a major financial crash.
Nobody's gonna buy stuff.
Then it was a little harder. It was a little harder. People still bought them. But maybe you had to shop around to find somebody to buy wholesale a little more than today.
Cool.
So, but yeah, that's something that I think that if you kind of manage your inventory and don't overbreed, I think that's a big thing that people do.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest, is like they don't think of, oh, what's the difference between if I have 50 adults and I have 100 adults? Well, the difference is 500 babies, you know? So, it's like, you better be ready for that. So it's like every animal you add, you have to think, every female you add, oh, I need 10 more shoe boxes.
Yeah.
For every female you add 10 shoe boxes, you know? For crested geckos.
Yeah.
If you're going to put any size on them. Yeah. So it's, it's one of those things where you have to, don't just expect that, oh yeah, I'll figure it out.
Just wing it.
I'll figure it. I'm just going to breed like 300 adults.
We'll figure it out as we go.
I'll figure out the babies. Because that's when you're going to be wholesaling. You're going to be wholesaling $500 geckos for $30 because you're not going to be able to catch a breath from all the work you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, managing that is very important.
Yeah.
Knowing what you can physically sell in a year and how many shows you want to do and how many times you want to post online, that helps keep expectations in check and realistic for how many animals you can.
So I see some people, like buying too many and they'll eventually downsize, right? They'll kind of slim down their collection.
And I've had moments where I was like bigger than I am. I was never bigger than I am now, but I've had moments where I was very small and moments where I was like, oh, this is kind of a lot. And then I've been where I am now, which is like a lot.
You get a lot.
For me.
Yeah. That's cool. That's awesome. I think that's really helpful in terms of buying and selling, whether online or at shows. And we were chatting and we're like, oh, should we talk about this aspect of breeding and whatnot? And we can, or we can save it for next time. What are your?
I say we save.
That'll be good. People, that'll be to be continued, right?
Yeah, we'll tease them with what's coming next. One of the things we're talking about next is breeding and ethics.
Good. Yeah.
So talking about the ethics of how we care for our animals, how we feed our animals, what we house our animals in, lineage, genetics, all these.
There's so many good things to discuss.
And kind of touching on like how much is what you can handle, right?
Yeah. So
all those things kind of play into the ethics of working with an animal that's a living thing. Right?
Yeah. So you and I were chatting and we're saying, oh, maybe we'll have like a guest every other episode or something, right? And then have a topic.
Well, I talked with Gabby and she's down.
She's down, yeah. Yeah, I asked her too. And then eventually I'll try to connect with, Cryptiles and other folks.
Yeah,
and
that'd be good.
I'll reach out.
I'll send a text over to Kyle too.
Yeah, sounds good, brother. All right, AJ.
Man. Well, thanks so much, Harry. Yeah. Another good one in the book.
It's always fun, brother. Always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Good to see you, man.
All right, later.
Bye.